Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss the politics, the real politic indeed, of the illegal migration bill, the Tories' latest atrocity as it enters the House of Lords stages. This is another of those why are Labour doing this videos, as I explain why Labour are doing this. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel. So, the illegal migration bill is well named. Not because it tackles illegal migration, which is what the Tories would like you to think, but because the bill is quite illegal. The intentions of the bill are dead against international law as well as basic human decency, and it should be taken out and given the old yellow treatment immediately. A motion was presented to the House of Lords which would do just this. It would essentially call for the bill to be rejected out of hand. Now, at the point I'm recording this, it's well in advance of it being published. You know, nothing's actually happened with that, but I sort of know that the motion is not going to be approved. But the motion is just a way of killing it completely at this stage. That's it. No messing about with amendments. The bill is a non-starter. Kill it and stop wasting everyone's time. The House of Lords would be justified in doing this as well. Now, they are an unelected body, so there's a code which stipulates that they do not interfere too much with legislation for which the elected chamber, the House of Commons, can claim a public mandate. You know, they can offer up amendments. The purpose of the House of Lords is to scrutinise legislation, to say, this bit doesn't quite do what you think it will do. We'll amend it to make it less insane. You know, make it all a bit less grotesque. But ultimately, you do not have unelected lords frustrating the work of elected MPs. However, there is no public mandate for this bill. Not only was it not promised in the 2019 Conservative Party manifesto, the source of all mandates for any government was what was in your manifesto, but that same manifesto actively promised to continue to accept asylum seekers and support refugees. This bill does the opposite. The purpose of this bill is to anyone who comes to this country to seek asylum is automatically to be deported. No questions about it. Now, it remains to be seen if that's how it works in practice, but that is the stated intention of this bill. So no question about it at all, as far as I can see. Constitutionally, the Lords, unelected they may be, can absolutely reject this bill out of hand because the public have not expressed any desire to see it through. However, Labour peers, yesterday as this is published, have said that they're not going to block the bill outright, but they will seek to amend it instead. Now, they have argued that if they block the bill completely, the government will just ram it through with the Parliament Act, bypassing the House of Lords, and it would then pass through in its current form. They're essentially arguing that it is better to amend the bill so that it is much less offensive than to see the government force it through in its full evil. So, does this argument hold water? No, not really. However, Labour probably do have a good reason for not killing the bill. It's just not the reason they're giving publicly. So two parts then. Why is their stated argument invalid, and what might the real, more valid reason be? Their argument is invalid because although the government could indeed ram the bill through using the Parliament Act and would indeed mean no amendments, they would have to wait for another session of Parliament to do so. Being realistic, there isn't time to have one before the general election. So if the House of Lords did vote to sink the bill completely, the government probably don't have another realistic opportunity to get it passed into law before the general election. Because even if, let us say they were to end a session of Parliament this autumn, say, start a new one, they'd have to start again. It wouldn't just pick up where it left off. They'd have to start it again. It would have to go through the same stages in the House of Commons, before which, unless they really are going for a late general election, there's just not time. And as nobody believes that the government would win, or sorry, the current government, the Tories would win the next general election, essentially the bill will just quietly die of loneliness on Suella Braverman's desk. So if Labour's stated argument is bollocks, and it almost certainly is, what's the real reason? Well, I don't get invited to their private meetings or anything, but it seems to me to be strategic. I'll explain by going over what would happen if the Lords actually voted the bill down, defeating it completely. If that happened, the very next day, the Tory government would immediately claim that they have this plan which will stop the boats. It's one of Sunak's 5 promises, remember, legislation to stop the boats. I'm going to pass this legislation to stop the boats. Never mind that they said that last year and passed the legislation and it didn't stop the boats. Oh no, this legislation will stop the boats, but Labour stopped it. All of the asylum problems would then overnight become Labour's problems, Labour's fault. Now, being clear, this bill doesn't actually do anything on a practical level. It won't stop the boats. It won't stop the rising backlog of immigration cases. It won't do anything other than make the Tories look even more feckless and evil. But if peers block it, the government will say that it would have solved the whole problem. We had this bill that was going to deal with the whole problem. In fact, when Sunak made his stop the boats promise, but without any serious plan to do so, I actually wondered what his fiddle would be. See, I wondered if the government expected Labour and Lib Dems to block this bill. I wondered if Sunak was actually banking on the fact that they would block this bill, playing into their hands. Because that is what would happen. What Labour are almost certainly doing here is avoiding the trap of being blamed for the Tories' mess. They know that the idea of blaming the last Labour government for the mess that's going on today is wearing a bit thin on the public. It might have worked in the coalition years. It may have worked in 2015. It's not really working now. But if the Tories could actually point to a vote where unelected Labour politicians blocked legislation that the government made a promise to implement at the start of the year, that would be different. And as uncomfortable as it is for some people who just don't seem to get it, this is another case of reality biting. It is realpolitik. Labour need the government to have full agency over all of their policies. They must not allow them to blame others. They know that this bill, if passed into law, won't actually meet Sunak's promise. They know he'll have nobody to blame because they didn't block it. Even the amendments which the Lords can suggest could be rejected by Tory MPs in Parliament if they wanted, although it's quite likely they'll... Well, I don't actually know what the amendments would be. It's possible that they will accept some. But this is just like in 2020. In 2020, as well as the pandemic, the Tories insisted on going ahead with their trade and cooperation agreement negotiations. People were saying, why don't we delay it until after we've dealt with the pandemic? No, full steam ahead. Starmer had nothing to say on the matter because he didn't want the Tories to blame Labour for a crap deal. Boris Johnson would say, oh, it's Labour chipping in, it weakened our hand. They tried it anyway. Notice how they tried it anyway, trying to suggest that Labour weakened their hand. That's why we ended up with a crap deal. It's what they were always planning to do. But Starmer was going, no, this is on you. And he said it at the time. This is on you. This is all on you. I'm not getting involved because he couldn't anyway. Leader of the opposition doesn't have the votes to do anything. This is all on you. Whatever deal we get at the end of it is your deal. Same situation here. If Labour peers blocked the bill, the Tories would lay the blame for the entire asylum mess at Labour's door. They would not have their own plans exposed to the reality of implementation, which would also help them in avoiding leaked votes to reform UK. If peers block this bill, it would be of the most immense help to the Conservatives. But by allowing the bill to go through, the problems with asylum continue. Both Labour and Reform UK get to say that their plans are better and the Conservatives are just failing harder and harder each year as the problem gets worse. They'll find themselves a year later and in more of a mess than ever over their precious asylum plans. No doubt next year there'll be another bit of legislation needed. For all those who consider asylum an important enough issue to use their vote on, the sane ones will vote for Labour, the insane ones will vote for Reform UK, but only the truly deranged will vote Conservative. It's not a hot button issue in Lib Dem target seats, by the way, hence they've got no need to engage in this nonsense. And I will just finish off by pointing out that one complaint about the move being that, it's all right talking about this, but real lives have been sacrificed by this decision. I disagree. The lives are sacrificed whenever we allow the Conservatives to form governments. Labour are doing this for strategic purposes, guaranteed. That is a mathematical way of me saying they're doing it to kick the Tories out. Yes, Labour have a very nice lead in the polls. We're not actually heading for a hung parliament despite what the Tory press say. It looks like a nice majority. But they have built that lead up by making strategic decisions. Decisions that a lot of people have disagreed with. The same people that have disagreed with this and this and this. If Labour had done what they'd have said, they wouldn't have that lead. They've built that lead up by making the strategic decisions, which aren't always nice. They haven't done it by being complacent enough to think, well, we can sacrifice the odd bit of strategy because, you know, this is a terrible thing, you know, clutching our pearls and all that. However well Labour do in a general election tomorrow, and at the moment it looks like they would do very well, it will also be less well in the real thing because the polls are going to tighten during the campaign itself. The Conservatives are going to have their campaign directed by someone with a brain, Isaac Levidow. He will improve the Conservatives' image. I don't know how many times I have to say it. The Labour leader, and I've said this, Starmer in place, I've said it with Corbyn in place. If I was shouting on the internet, I'd have said it with the others as well. The Labour leader in opposition has one job: to form a government. That is it. Nothing else. Nothing else. People do not get to attack Labour for things that happen under the Conservatives, because that's what's happening again here. It's like, oh, this terrible thing the Conservatives are doing, it's all Labour's fault. No, you blame the government for government decisions, not the opposition. When Labour in power, then it's different. When Labour in power, the leader of Labour has suddenly a lot of jobs, and I will expect them all to be done. But right now, one job. And I will not thank any Labour leader for allowing a Conservative government to win again because they needed to clutch their pearls. I didn't thank Corbyn for it. I didn't thank Miliband for it. I didn't thank Brown for it. And this bill, this isn't like the Policing Act or the Public Order Act or the other bits of legislation that are coming, like the Online Harms Bill. This isn't something that Labour would even really need to deal with if they were in power. It gives the government certain powers to be a dick, although it still remains to be seen just how much they'll get away with using it. But under a Labour government, which has committed to processing claims properly, in fact, they announced plans just a few months ago about processing claims, some of them very quickly, it doesn't really do anything. Labour will set up a system for asylum claimants. As we not only know that, but they've said it as much. And this legislation can then die just as quietly as if it had been blocked this week, because it will have no force in law because the government won't use it. They can just quietly get rid of it later on. Only if it were blocked this week, of course, it would give the Tories a boost for the election, risking the chance that it would not only become law in all its misplaced glory, but used for years to come to sacrifice more lives under a Conservative government lurching ever further to the right. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.